Imagine a $64 billion train where you spend 90% of the journey in total darkness. For a country that essentially invented the scenic commute with the world-famous Shinkansen, this is a radical, almost claustrophobic departure from tradition. Since the first high-speed line opened in 1964, the Japanese bullet train has been the ultimate symbol of high-tech efficiency, carrying over 10 billion passengers and helping cement Japan as the world's third-largest economy. We've all seen the iconic shots, the sleek white nose of the train streaking past a snow-capped Mount Fuji. It's beautiful, it's efficient, and it's fast hitting speeds of up to 320 kilometers an hour. But for the engineers at Central Japan Railway, fast isn't the finish line. They want to move at twice the speed of current bullet trains and cut journey times in half. The catch? To do that, they have to abandon the view. Enter the Chuo Shinkansen, the world's most expensive gamble on magnetic levitation. This isn't just an upgrade, it's a total reimagining of what transit looks like. By using superconducting magnets to hover 10 centimeters off the track, these trains eliminate the friction that comes with being in contact with the rails, allowing them to cruise at a staggering 500 kilometers an hour. But physics is a harsh mistress. At those speeds, even a slight curve becomes a massive engineering hurdle. To keep the train moving in the straightest line possible, Japan is burrowing through the earth on a scale we've never seen. We're talking about a 285-kilometer line, where 256 kilometers of it, about 90%, exists entirely in tunnels. It's an invisible railway, a massive tube of light and speed buried deep beneath the Japanese Alps. This is a $64 billion mega-project that effectively turns a cross-country trip into a high-speed transit event through the bedrock. It's bold, it's incredibly expensive, and, as it moves toward completion, it's becoming one of the most controversial infrastructure projects in history. The world is waiting to see if Japan can successfully hover above these challenges, or if this is a step too far. To understand why Japan is spending billions to bury its pride and joy underground, you have to understand the brutal physics of speed. In the world of high-speed rail, curves are the enemy. When a train hits a bend at 320 kilometers an hour, centrifugal force wants to push that carriage right off the tracks. The existing Tokaido Shinkansen, the line that has defined Japanese travel for decades, was built to hug the coastline. It's a beautiful route, but it's a series of compromises, winding around mountains and tracing the jagged edges of the Pacific. But at 500 kilometers an hour, those compromises become lethal. At that speed, the Chuo Shinkansen needs a path so straight, it effectively ignores the geography of the Japanese archipelago. This requirement for a straight-line trajectory forced engineers to make a radical decision. Instead of going around the mountains, they are going through them. We aren't just talking about a few hills. They are piercing the southern Japanese Alps. This involves digging some of the deepest tunnels Japan has ever seen. Out of the 285-kilometer stretch from Tokyo to Nagoya, a staggering 256 kilometers will be tucked away in the dark. For American context, that's like traveling from New York City to Washington, D.C., and seeing the sun for only about 15 minutes of the trip. The decision to burrow wasn't just about speed, though. It was also a defensive play. Japan's coastline is notoriously earthquake-prone. By moving the artery of the country's economy deep into the bedrock of the mountains, JR Central is effectively creating a redundant route that is shielded from the tsunamis and coastal tremors that threaten the original Shinkansen lines. But piercing the Alps is easier said than done. It requires an engineering effort on par with the world's most ambitious mega-projects, turning the Chuo Shinkansen into a massive, hidden complex of concrete and steel. The result is a railway that is practically invisible to the public. It serves a high-tech ghost moving through the literal foundation of the country. It is the ultimate expression of human will over nature. But as the engineers soon found out, the mountains were ready to fight back. To achieve this invisible flight through the mountains, Japan isn't just building a faster train. They are essentially building a ground-based rocket ship that runs on absolute zero. The heart of the Chuo Shinkansen is its superconducting Maglev technology. For an American audience used to the screeching wheels and rattling tracks of aging rail systems, this is pure science fiction. Most modern trains are limited by the physical reality of steel. Steel friction eventually turns into heat and wear, creating a speed ceiling that conventional bullet trains are finally starting to hit. To break through that ceiling, Japanese engineers decided to do away with the wheels entirely. But you don't just float a multi-ton train carriage through thin air. without some serious physics. The system uses superconducting magnets, which are electromagnets cooled by liquid helium to a mind-boggling 200 facings C. At this extreme temperature, electrical resistance vanishes, allowing the magnets to create incredibly powerful fields that lift and propel the train. However, this isn't a hoverboard that works from a standstill. The Chuo Shinkansen actually starts its journey on rubber wheels. It has to taxi down the track like a jet on a runway. Once it hits 150 kilometers an hour, about 93 miles per hour, the magnetic force becomes strong enough to take over. The wheels retract, and the train takes off, hovering a full 10 centimeters above the guideway. This 10-centimeter gap is crucial. While the Shanghai Maglev, the only other commercial line in the world, hovers only about 1 centimeter above its track using a different technology, Japan's high-altitude hover is a deliberate safety choice. It provides a massive buffer against the tremors of an earthquake, ensuring that even if the ground shakes, the train remains suspended in a magnetic cradle, untouched by the vibration of the earth. It's a system where the track itself is the engine, using sets of coils to both levitate the mass and pull it forward at 500 kilometers an hour. It is an autonomous, frictionless, and incredibly precise dance of particles at sub-zero temperatures. But maintaining that frozen heart requires a staggering amount of energy and an infrastructure so complex it makes a traditional railway look like a child's toy. While the physics of the maglev are a dream, the geography of Shizuoka has become a nightmare. This is the heart of the deep tunnel dilemma. To keep that 500 km an hour line straight, the Chuo Shinkansen has to punch right through the Southern Alps, specifically deep under the Shizuoka prefecture. But here, the invisible railway stops being a marvel and starts being a threat to the lifeblood of the region, the Oi River. The Oi River is a major water source for the millions of people and the massive agricultural industry in Shizuoka, and local residents are terrified that digging a tunnel this deep at some points more than 1,300 feet below the surface will act like a giant drain, siphoning off the groundwater and drying up the basin. This isn't just a group of protesters with signs. This is a full-blown political blockade. The controversy became so intense that the incumbent governor of Shizuoka actually ran his 2021 re-election campaign on a platform of stopping the maglev, and he won. While JR Central insists their environmental studies show the risk is low, local governments have slammed those reports as insufficient and hasty. In Japan, where consensus is everything, having an entire prefecture stand in the way of a national project is a massive crisis. It's a classic American-style standoff. A high-tech federal vision crashing head-on into local rights and environmental preservation. The delay in Shizuoka has essentially frozen the project in place. Construction has been underway since 2014, with an original opening date of 2027. But without the Shizuoka tunnel, the line is a bridge to nowhere. This bottleneck has forced the Japanese government to step in with massive loans to keep the project afloat. But it hasn't solved the fundamental question. Is the ability to save an hour of travel time worth the risk of an ecological disaster for a major agricultural region? For the people of Shizuoka, the answer so far is a resounding no. They are forcing the rest of Japan to ask a difficult question. How much progress can one community be expected to sacrifice for a train they'll barely even see? The Shizuoka stalemate isn't just an environmental headache, it's a financial hemorrhage. In the world of megaprojects, time isn't just money, it's a compounding interest trap. When the Chuo Shinkansen was first greenlit, the price tag was already eye-watering at roughly $13.7 billion. But as the years have dragged on, the cost has ballooned to a staggering $64 billion. To put that in perspective for an American audience, that's more than double the cost of the entire Apollo 11 moon landing program when adjusted for inflation. It makes it one of the most expensive infrastructure projects ever attempted in Japan's history. So, where is all that money going? A huge chunk of it is buried in the very tunnels we've been discussing. Tunneling through an active mountain range like the southern Japanese Alps is exponentially more expensive than laying track on flat ground. Every month of delay caused by political friction or technical hurdles in the bedrock adds millions to the bottom line. Then there are the stations. Building high-tech hubs that can handle a train hovering at 500 kilometers an hour requires specialized engineering that has seen its own share of unexpected hurdles. The financial reality of the maglev is also far grimmer than the traditional bullet train once it's actually running. Because the maglev relies on massive amounts of electricity to maintain those superconducting temperatures and propel the train, it will be significantly more expensive to operate than the current high-speed network. Critics are now asking if the math even adds up anymore. When the project began, Japan's economy was in a different place. Today, with a shrinking population and the rise of remote work, some are wondering if a $64 billion invisible railway is a visionary investment or a massive sunk cost. The government has already stepped in with a loan to push the completion of the Tokyo to Osaka leg forward by 10 years, hoping to jumpstart the economic benefits before the bill becomes insurmountable. It is a high-stakes race between technological pride and fiscal reality. The strategic endgame for this $64 billion tunnel isn't just about shaving an hour off a commute. It's about a concept planners call the death of distance. By linking Tokyo and Osaka in just 67 minutes, Japan is attempting to merge its two largest economic engines into a single, massive mega hub. Imagine being able to live in Osaka and work in downtown Tokyo without a second thought. This isn't just a fantasy. We've seen similar megacity experiments in China's Pearl River Delta and the blurring of lines between D.C. and Boston in the U.S. Northeast. The goal is to create an economic powerhouse on a scale the world has never seen before, sharing prosperity across regions that used to be a half-day trip apart. However, when you look past the megacity hype, the operational reality starts to look a bit more complicated. For all its speed, the maglev actually has some significant logistical bottlenecks. Because switching the magnetic tracks takes significantly more time than a traditional rail switch, the Chuo Shinkansen will only be able to run a train once every 10 minutes. To an American used to waiting 20 minutes for a subway, that sounds fast, but for the current Tokyo-Osaka line, it's a downgrade. Traditional bullet trains currently scream through that route every 3 minutes. Furthermore, the maglev carriages are physically smaller and hold fewer passengers than the existing Shinkansen. So, Japan is essentially building a system that is twice as fast but moves fewer people, less often, at a higher energy cost. It's a classic Silicon Valley-style trade-off, prioritizing peak performance over mass-market efficiency. While this death of distance could revolutionize the Japanese economy, there is a very real risk that the maglev remains a premium service, an elite, underground shuttle for the business class, while the rest of the country continues to rely on the slow 200 miles per hour trains they've used for decades. Japan is betting that the economic quantum leap will outweigh these daily inconveniences, but it's a gamble that assumes extreme speed is what the 21st century actually needs. As the Chuo Shinkansen nears its delayed completion, we find ourselves at a familiar crossroads in Japanese history. Back in 1959, when construction began on the first Shinkansen, the project was ridiculed. Critics called it a money pit, a relic of a bygone rail era being built in an age of highways and jet planes. But when those first bullet trains streaked across the countryside in 1964, they didn't just move people. They transformed Japan from a war-torn nation into the world's second-largest economy. Today, the invisible railway faces that same wall of skepticism, but the stakes are even higher. The question remains, is the Chuo Shinkansen a quantum leap for transportation or a step too far? On one hand, you have a $64 billion marvel of engineering that could turn Japan's major cities into a single, hyper-efficient megalopolis. On the other, you have a project grappling with skyrocketing costs, environmental standoff in Shizuoka, and a mounting debate over whether the country actually needs to move this fast. While China has emerged as the new king of high-speed rail, Japan is betting its future on a technology that literally hovers above the challenges of the physical world. Ultimately, the success of the maglev won't be measured by its world record 603 kilometers per hour test runs, but by whether it can repeat the miracle of 1,964. Can it foster a new era of economic growth, or will it be remembered as a $64 billion monument to the limits of engineering? As the world watches, Japan continues to burrow through the darkness of the Southern Alps, racing toward a future where distance is dead and the commute is invisible. Whether this gamble pays off or proves to be a step too far is a story that will be written in the bedrock of Japan for the next century.